What's up everyone, I'm Mech and welcome to another video. And this video is about my live workflow. This is a video a lot of you have requested me to do for some time now, so here it is. And it's kind of ironic because I just sold a Digitakt and a Digitone, so I'm actually doing this video with one Digitakt and one Digitone and one DB4, and I'll explain how my setup was with a second Digitakt and a second Digitone. Let's just dive right into it, and don't forget, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button to be notified when a new video comes online. I used to have two Digitones and two Digitakts, and they were situated like this. Two Digitakts here and two Digitones here, and a DB4 on the right side of my setup. So the only difference with having one of each is that I mixed between them. I see a Digitone plus a Digitakt as one deck, basically. So I had two decks, each consisting of a Digitone and a Digitakt. The cool thing about that is that you can kind of work like a DJ while really doing a live set and arranging your stuff completely live. And having full control over each element of the live set. At the end of the video, I'll give you the reason why I stepped away from that, but having one of each is not that different because the DB4 has 4 loopers and I can just loop stuff and then mix another groove into that loop and keep it going like that. So that's basically how I'm going to perform it from now on. Of course, adding an octa track with a lot more possibilities to layer stuff on top of those loops and everything. So I'm moving more towards something that gives me even more possibilities to improvise and kind of opens up this thing where I kind of have to do that, and it's really good for the way I like to work. This is basically one deck, you could see it like that. And the way I programmed stuff is audio track 1 is a kick, audio track 2 is bass, most of the time. This is just how I program stuff most of the time. The third is either bass, extra bass, or percussive stuff. And sometimes I use a lot of sample locks on track 3 to kind of have these little changes constantly happening. So on the fourth track, I mostly program claps and distinctive things that sound like claps. In the fifth, I'll program stabs or lead like things. On the sixth, the closed head or hi-hats in general. The seventh, mostly open hi-hats, and in breaks sometimes reverse, sweeps and that sort of stuff. And on the eighth, I will program pads or rides, basically. I have grooves that are entirely built within the Digitakt, and sometimes, most of the times right now, these days, I'll use the Digitone to create stabs and pads and basses sometimes, which opens up some workload of the Digitakt to add more percussive instruments. On the Digitone, the first track is the main lead most of the time. The second track is a pad or something like that. The third track is another layer or maybe a sweep or an effect. And the third can be a bass, fourth rather. Can be a bass sound or maybe even a kick. And the Digitone is a little bit more fluid in that way because it's not set in stone. It's more varied in how I program stuff. They're simply linked by a MIDI cable from Digitakt MIDI out to Digitone MIDI in. And this is the master clock, so when I start this, that will start as well. That's the simple part. Then, and this is the very interesting part, I think, is the way Digitone can work with MIDI. So if I go to the MIDI config, you can actually set everything to MIDI, of course, that's really important, but you can set different channels for each track, which is really important in this case. So I've set track 1 is MIDI channel 9 through MIDI channel 12, and then I have set the FX control to MIDI channel 13, and the rest I turned off. I always do that. I set as many things of MIDI off so no conflicts can happen at during a live performance. Weird stuff you don't have control over. And now the cool thing is, if I go to press Funk and go to the setup of this pattern, you can actually go to stuff like if I scroll down, I have pitch bend, velocity mod, modulation wheel, breath controller, and aftertouch. And all these things contain, let's go to the modulation wheel, contain 4 slots of parameters we can control with modulation wheel. So this is a mod matrix. Yeah, you can really abuse that stuff, and I really love that. So when I start the Digitakt, you can actually see that the modulation wheel is being automated. The way I programmed it is like this. 8 MIDI channels on the Digitakt, each send MIDI to the Digitone if I want. Track 9 and 10, MIDI track A and B, send MIDI info to track MIDI channel 9. MIDI channel C and D send to channel 10, MIDI channel E sends to 11, MIDI channel F to 12, 15 to 13, and 16 to 13 as well. Like I just explained, MIDI channel 9 is track 1, audio track 1 of the Digitone. Channel 10 is track 2, etc. And channel 13 is the FX channel. So I have 2 channels of MIDI. I can control parameters on audio track 1 of the Digitone with. And for track 2, also 2 MIDI channels, and for 3 and 4, only 1 channel. There's multiple things you can do. You can, of course, add values and map them to certain values on the Digitone. I found that a little bit too much of a constraint, because it will always be the same per pattern, or you have to set it up per pattern, and this is kind of tedious work, and it can get you out of the workflow, and I want to keep things fast as possible. So what I came up with is actually using the mod wheel, these parameters, pitch bend, aftertouch, mod wheel, and breath control, and if I want velocity as well, and use those to trigger the mod matrix on the Digitone to control multiple parameters. So in this case, and this is one thing I do a lot, I can do some pseudo sidechain compression. I use the MIDI LFO on track MIDI track A to control the mod wheel in a pulse, like on the kick, as you can see, with a lot of depth in this case. So if I go to the Digitone settings, you have the modulation wheel matrix, and I have it set to amp volume -110. When I start the Digitakt, every time it gets triggered with a lot of depth, the amp volume goes to -110, or relative to the incoming mod wheel value. So there you have sort of a pseudo sidechain compression right there. And I also set another parameter to LFO1 depth. So that is really, really cool. You can go up to 4 parameters per matrix. So of course I can parameter lock the value of the mod wheel or the pitch bend and map stuff to the pitch bend as well, you know. And here it is bipolar, so you can do very nice stuff with that as well. So there's that. This is one really important thing I incorporated in my live set and made these to make these two act as one DAC basically. And the cool thing about the mod matrix is that I can control multiple parameters, different parameters per pattern that I assign to the mod matrix. So for each sound I design, I have certain parameters I want to control. Maybe I want the mix to have another LFO. Maybe I used up all the LFOs on this sound, and I want to add another MIDI LFO to that sound. I can simply go to the mod matrix and add that parameter to the modulation wheel and modulate it with the MIDI LFO. So this is a really nice workflow thing I really like to do. That is for the normal tracks, and of course we have 3 effects tracks. I only use the delay and the reverb to control with the Digitakt, but you can change that, of course. If I go to track 15 and 16, I can actually show you that I for these tracks I did set values according to the pages of the parameters on the pages of the delay and the reverb. So 15 MIDI track G and H are delay and reverb respectively, and well, it almost is exactly as it says here, except for the ping pong on and off, because I mapped value 1 to time and value 2 to smaller increments like cents. So I can show that actually. With value 2, I can do tiny increments on the delay. I really like to do that because it creates this kind of, it makes things less exact and a bit more organic. So value 3 is width and feedback for value 4, etc. So that is exactly the same. Value 8 is the volume. And again, I can use the MIDI LFO on the Digitakt to modulate the volume of the delay to also get this sidechain effect going. And the same goes for the reverb. It's exactly the same as it is here, and value 8 is the volume as well. And the cool thing about this is that I can actually now parameter lock stuff, parameters on the delay and the reverb page. And you can do some really cool stuff with that. So yeah, that's where I use it for. One thing that is really important, and I'm getting into a lot of detail, but hey, I hope this is interesting. It's very nerdy. This is pretty important to know. If I don't have any other lock tricks set, I make sure that I have one trigger that is set to first condition, so it triggers the delay and the reverb MIDI channel. So these values are set to the delay and the reverb page. So that is important to know, because when I switch to another pattern and on the Digitakt another pattern is playing, it can get confusing because I've set parameters here which do not match the parameters here. Certainly if I start tweaking, like, okay, I want this, I think after a while of playing the groove, maybe I need a little bit more reverb, and I start tweaking it here but not here. And I then add some stuff here, these volumes will overrule those. So to make sure that doesn't happen, these are leading. So if I want to change, and this is a bit quirky, but after a while you'll get used to it. At least I did. If I want to change delay settings on this pattern, I'll do that. I'll do so on the Digitakt. That's basically it. Or I'll tweak these until I'm satisfied, and then match these parameters with those parameters to make sure that they are the same. And then I add this trick with first condition, so that when I switch to this pattern, the delay and reverb settings match, or will set the way they are on the Digitakt. So the Digitakt is leading. That way, when I tweaked a lot of stuff, I can simply start the playing again and it will reset the stuff. As you can see, it will reset the settings to the values as I set them in the Digitakt. So when I save the pattern in the Digitakt, I know that the delay and reverb settings are always good and will be set accordingly on the Digitone. So moving over to the DB4, when I had 4 decks, Digitakt 1 was plugged into input 1. Digitakt 2 was plugged into input 2, Digitone 1 into input 3, and Digitone 4 into Digitone 2. This is so confusing. Digitone 2 was plugged into channel 4, and I would use these two for deck 1, so to speak. These two for deck 2. The cool thing is that I had 4 channels of audio, and I could mix between them and loop them and filter stuff away and layer that on top of each other. So a lot of possibilities it will give me, and I could add effects on each channel individually. It gave me a lot of possibilities. It was really, really nice. The way I have plugged in right now is Digitakt is on input 1 and Digitone input 3, and I can actually duplicate these to multiple channels. And that opens up more channels to improvise with. So I could now set this to all wet, route Digitakt to that, set it to delay and set it to delay and a ping pong delay. Use the fader to add some extra funk. Then I can simply switch it back to dry, to maybe the Digitone if I want to do that. Have this to Digitakt 1, set this to loop. I'll show that in a minute how that flow would go, and I'll try to do it as slow as possible so you can really follow how that could work. But first, I want to show you how the Digitakt and the Digitone are linked to each other. The DB4 doesn't have a Midi input, so it cannot sync to a Midi clock, incoming Midi clock that way. But what I do live is I make sure the Midi clock on the DB4 is matched with the master clock of the Digitakt. So if I move up in BPM, I'll do that, change that here manually. It's a matter of seconds, so it's not that difficult to do. And they are both rock solid, so you can let them play 30, 40, 50 minutes, I think even, and they will still be in sync, so that's totally fine. So I'll show you how a transition from one pattern to another pattern can work. Let's say I have a thing going funky. I can now use a loop to loop the Digitakt, make sure that there are 4 bars passed. There we go. Now I can simply switch to another pattern. And mix that into the current pattern. Let's try something. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm just gonna over to Okay, so that is how you can transition from one groove to another groove with the loopers, and that is one of the things you can do, one of the ways you can do it. Yeah, that is the workflow. When using two decks of a Digitone and a Digitakt, you can mix between them. That gives another dimension. There's multiple ways you can work with that, and I did love the two Digitakt Digitone setup, but to have two projects on each that I had to manage all the time was a bit time consuming. So in the end, I decided to go for an octatrack. Also adding stereo samples into my live setup and a bit more craziness maybe. So yeah, it's but still two Digitakts, two Digitones, and a DB4 is a very cool setup, and I really loved playing with it. And now I'm minimalized. One Digitakt, one Digitone, and a DB4. This is gonna be my small setup, and then with an octatrack it's gonna be my big setup, and then I have a third setup maybe with a Dominion 1. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. I will try to answer all of them. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell thingy next to the subscribe button, so you get notified when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.